and thanks for your words. The manager's announcement tonight provides excellent news from the First Christian Church and from other faith communities and faith leaders, like the financial contribution from the Evergreen Christian Congregation and the work of the Westminster Presbyterian Church. This most recent pledge of support highlights the impacts of homelessness. It's not an issue that just can be left to city government. To be effective, we need to reach across the region and throughout the community. We need partners in the faith community, from the business community, and nonprofit, and from service clubs. An effective response requires that the Thurston community pull together for shared objectives. Camping under the 4th Avenue Bridge was identified as a problem back in January, when the unsanctioned encampments at B Street and at State and Franklin were closed. At that time, city officials expressed confidence that new sites would be provided for needed capacity, and the bridge encampment would be closed promptly. The community and the campers under the bridge were told that the encampment would not be removed until an alternative site was made available. In February, in this room and in city newsletters, the message was, and I quote, "We are confident we will have the needed shelter options to address the bridge encampment soon." So now, in September, after more than 7 months, we still do not have needed shelter options to address the camp at the bridge. Every member of this council and many staff have been working diligently, urgently, to identify a place for the bridge campers to go. So far, we have failed. And I share in that responsibility for that failure. Considerable work has been undertaken with our regional and state partners, but as of today, there is no new capacity. We do not have a second mitigation site. We have not expanded the Salvation Army shelter, Rosie's Place, or other shelters. We have not had a winter warming center for the past 2 years. Instead, we have overburdened the private health services center and hampered its success. We've not created the necessary partnerships to strengthen our coordinated entry program, and we have not created eviction intervention services to stop adding to the growing number of homeless people in our community. Right now, as we are meeting, hundreds of people in Olympia are living under tarps, under tents, and in other makeshift shelters. They're in Grass Lake Refuge, in Percival Canyon, behind Yager Park. They're in the jungle, they're off Wheeler Street, and in many other hidden camps throughout our city. Hundreds of campers are in environmentally sensitive areas, behind homes, in the trees, in ravines. The public health and safety condition, the public safety and health conditions of each of these camps is concerning. And the camp under the bridge is not much different from all the others, except that it's an obvious eyesore. In May of last year, this council passed a groundbreaking resolution that established a set of local actions to combat homelessness. That resolution defined how Olympia would act, what approach this city would take in dealing with the single most significant and urgent issue facing this community. This council recognized homelessness as the most imminent and pressing problem, and we authorized extraordinary emergency powers to effectively address the issue. And now, more than a year later, we have not lived up to that commitment. We resolved to act with compassion, integrity, and effectiveness, and to implement actions that are evidence-based best practices to address the crisis of homelessness. The unanimous adoption of that May 2018 resolution did not come lightly. You may recall that before adoption, the council modified the resolution to include additional language about the commitment of the city council and the city organization to a culture that reflects these values. it is very difficult to locate homeless services. I want to commend my council colleagues. Every one of you, each one of you, has pulled together, working with our neighboring jurisdictions, the county, and with the state to implement better solutions. And now, with winter coming, and with the state to implement, with winter coming, we find ourselves up against a wall. We must act decisively. We can't have vulnerable people out in the cold when the next snowmageddon arrives. Last month, the council was advised of a staff proposal to clear the camp under the bridge. As proposed, the city would simply empty the camp, period. In this scenario, the bridge campers will likely relocate to downtown streets and into neighborhood greenbelts. I don't see how that's an improvement. This proposal just pushes people around. It takes Olympia back to the days of whack-a-mole enforcement. There's no progress in this, just repeated scuffles and police action. This approach is expensive, ineffective, and perpetual. And there is nothing to be gained by pushing people around. That cycle must be brought to an end. The clearing proposal called into question the sincerity and determination of this council and this community. We made a powerful commitment to evidence-based best practices. The proposal to simply clear the camp is far from a best practice. The idea that we would move forward without plans for the people that we would displace effectively abandons our resolutions, our emergency declarations, and our commitments. We would have demonstrated that we are not a trustworthy partner for our community members and for others. This is a serious problem. We are in the middle of negotiations with our regional partners regarding joint homeless services, and we are finalizing a long-term homeless response plan. We need to be trustworthy in that process. A second mitigation site is in the works. I suggest we redouble our efforts, use our emergency powers, and get that mitigation site open. Let's make the tough choices, create the ability to responsibly move people off of unmanaged public property, and the cycle of endless whack-a-mole enforcement must come to an end. Now, with the support of the First Christian Church, we've been told that the camp clearing is expected to be delayed. I appreciate that a speedy response may be possible. But at the same time, my motion calls for assurance that the delay not be tied to a calendar, but rather to conditions on the ground. Through this action, the council will establish expectations that before the site is cleared, a comparable, safe, and appropriate alternative location will be available to the people currently in the bridge encampment. As we move through this interim period, we need regular progress reports from staff. Our community needs to know what is happening. And to ensure that the council is fully transparent in our community and future camp clearances that might trigger the need for advance notice to the occupants must be brought to this council for affirmative approval well before the clearing begins. Thank you, Mayor Selby.